Hey guys, tonight we're slipping past the heavy stone gates of a medieval castle, not to see the knights, not to marvel at the stained glass chapels or grand feasts, but to follow the silent steps of the women who lived behind those walls. Imagine candlelight flickering across cold stone corridors, your breath visible in the air as you walk barefoot through drafty halls. Outside, the village is quiet beneath a velvet sky. But inside the castle, behind the illusion of grandeur, the reality is colder than the stone beneath your feet. You're not royalty tonight. You're simply a woman of the castle. Maybe a noble daughter locked into marriage by a contract signed before you could speak. Maybe a serving maid, eyes lowered, hands, chapped ears, always straining for the sound of boots on stone. Or maybe, just maybe, you're the lady of the keep, but even then your silks can't protect you from isolation, from expectations, from the weight of titles that never truly set you free. And trust me, you probably wouldn't survive this life, not just because of the labor, but because of how much silence you'd have to swallow. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing how far this sleepy little time machine travels. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake in darkness. The fire has gone out again. Your chamber, if you can call it that, is as still as a tomb and almost as cold. The thick stone walls hold back the wind, but also the warmth. You lie there, fingers stiff, breath forming little clouds, wondering whether the sunrise will reach your window slit this morning, or whether another misty gray curtain of drizzle will blanket the tower. There's no mattress, not like what you're used to, just a thin sack stuffed with straw, and even that feels lumpy. If you're lucky, the mice haven't gotten to it again. You hear one skitter now, bold, quick, probably near the bread crust you tucked away last night, too tired to finish eating. Your shift is linen, but it's already damp with sweat from the heavy woolen blanket draped over your body. Scratchy. Always scratchy. Even luxury has an edge in this place. Then comes the sound. Footsteps on the spiral stair outside your door. Slow. Deliberate. You freeze. Every woman here knows that sound, the uncertain shuffle of someone coming to fetch you, or to judge you, or just to make sure you haven't died in the night. It's only Margot, the castle maid. She creaks open the door and curtsies without a word. No eye contact. Never any eye contact. "You're summoned," she whispers. "Of course you are. Whether you're a noble or just married to one, your day never starts on your own terms. Your duties might range from embroidery circles to long sessions, hearing the petitions of lower-born tenants, sometimes with your husband, sometimes in his place. It should feel empowering. It doesn't. You rise slowly. A woman can't hurry in these halls. One wrong step on the uneven stone and you'll twist your ankle, and that means gossip. You remember what happened to Lady Eleanor when she fell down the stairs. They said it was clumsiness. You remember the bruises on her arms. The corridors echo with your movements, and the walls are decorated with tapestries, not for beauty, but for warmth. Each one depicts some idealized knightly triumph, St. George slaying the dragon Arthur at Camelot. Never women. Or if women do appear, they're always watching, always waiting. At breakfast, you sit with the other women of the household. There is stale bread, watered ale, a sliver of hard cheese. No talking unless it's whispered or about duty. You ask after the health of someone's son. You hear murmurs of a nearby village with fever. Always fever. You remember when the last winter sickness came. Half the servants died. One of your chambermaids, a girl of 14, coughed herself to death over 3 nights. Her body was wrapped in linen and buried outside the walls. You were told not to cry. Nobility must set an example, they said. You've learned how to walk that tightrope. Speak, but not too loudly. Smile, but never beam. Cry, but only in secret. Later, you retreat to the solar, the only room in the castle where sunlight might spill in through the windows if the weather is merciful. There you work on your needlepoint, a never-ending tapestry of trees, lions, saints, and flowers you've never seen. Each stitch must be perfect, not for your pride, but because mistakes are seen as carelessness. One of the older ladies joins you. Her fingers are twisted from arthritis. Still, she stitches. She hums a song you once knew as a lullaby. You don't speak. You don't have to. In the afternoon, there's a summons to meet the steward. Your husband is away, something about a border dispute, so you're expected to oversee the delivery of grain. You sit in a stone chair, elevated just enough to feel like a judgment seat. Below, peasants shuffle forward, eyes, low teeth, rotted hands, cracked and bleeding. They offer their measures, wait for approval, and depart. You want to smile at them. You want to ask their names. But you don't. That would seem soft. When the sun sets, the torches are lit. The corridors become eerie again, the shadows too thick, the air too still. A draft slips beneath your skirts. Somewhere a guard laughs too loud. You tense. Dinner is meat stew boiled beyond recognition, salty enough to hide the sourness. You sip slowly, trying not to taste. Conversation remains dutiful. Someone mentions a neighboring baron who's taken a second wife. The old lady snorts. You try not to smile. Later in your chamber, you sit at the window. It's not really a view, just a slit in the wall, but you watch the moon, pale and perfect, and wonder how far away it is. You think of the women in your family who lived like this before you. Their names are carved in the chapel stones, but you've never heard their stories. Only that they were dutiful and quiet and well-kept. As you pull the wool blanket over your knees and settle in for another long, cold night, you hear it again. A mouse, no two. Even the mice have company tonight. And you just have the stone. You sleep in patches, never fully. The chill wakes you. Then the silence. Then the dreams, those strange half-memories of faces you once knew but can't name anymore. Sometimes you dream of green fields with no walls, of walking barefoot in tall grass with the wind in your hair. No veil, no shoes, no one watching. But you always wake to stone. Your body aches from sleeping on the uneven mattress. It's not proper to complain. Complaints are for those who serve. You are supposed to carry yourself with dignity, with grace. Grace even when your back hurts and your monthly blood has stained your only clean shift. You move slowly, dressing yourself before the servants arrive. They're supposed to help you, but you don't always want to be seen. You've learned to dress in silence, even lace the stays yourself. Pride or shame, you're not sure which. Probably both. Margot brings you your water. She sets down the pitcher and bowl, says nothing, and leaves. You splash cold water on your face, blinking at your reflection in the polished metal mirror. It's warped, so even your own image lies. You wonder if the mirror tells the truth, or the stories others tell about you do. Breakfast is porridge today. Gritty gray, lukewarm. It fills your stomach, though not your soul. You eat in silence. One of the younger girls sniffles into her sleeve. No one asks why. You are summoned again, not by name, never by name, but with a quiet knock and the words, "My lady, the priest, has arrived." You wrap your cloak around you and descend the stairs. The chapel is cold, its stone pews unwelcoming. You sit, hands folded, head bowed. The priest's voice echoes as he recites scripture, and your mind drifts. You think of a time before all this, before the veil, before the wedding, before duty. But those memories are fading. After prayers, you're expected to make confession. You step behind the curtain and kneel. The priest's voice is soft but distant. Confess your sins, child. What sins do you have, really? You think uncharitable thoughts about the steward. You spoke harshly to Margot when she spilled the ink. You've doubted the path laid before you. You've wished for escape. Are those sins? You whisper them anyway. Pray, he says. Be grateful for the roof over your head, for the honor you hold. Gratitude. Yes. Always that, even when your life is not your own. The rest of the morning is spent supervising the laundresses. The linens must be scrubbed in icy water, and though you're not the one scrubbing, your job is to make sure they do it respectably. You don't know what that means anymore. Respectable, efficient, obedient, clean. All the words expected of women, never of men. You nod to the women as they work. One has bruises on her wrists. Another is pregnant again, her fourth. You don't ask about the fathers. You know better than to ask questions you aren't allowed to answer. By mid-afternoon, you're called to host. A visiting noblewoman is arriving, and you are expected to entertain her. You force a smile and stand tall at the gates as her carriage rattles into the courtyard. She is everything a lady should be. Poised, perfumed, perfectly rehearsed. Her dress is stitched with silver thread. Her hair glistens beneath a silk coif. Her lips curl into a knowing smile the moment your eyes meet. "My dear," she says, taking your hands in hers, "what a charming little corner of the world you've landed in." You nod politely. The two of you make your way to the solar, trailed by ladies-in-waiting who hover like shadows. The noblewoman, Lady Iseult, sits, sighs, and begins talking. Not to you exactly, but near you. She speaks of feasts and fashion, of rumors from the royal court, of whose son has disgraced whom, and which duke has taken yet another mistress. You nod, smile, laugh when it's expected. Have you heard, she whispers, voice like silk sliding over glass, that the queen's maid disappeared last month, vanished from the castle entirely? You raise an eyebrow. Of course they say she ran away, but between you and me, she leans in, her perfume overwhelming. I suspect she was silenced. You force a soft chuckle, unsure whether to be amused or horrified. Either one could be a misstep. Isn't court life thrilling? She sighs. You think about how thrilling it would be to spend 1 hour outside these walls without a veil or a chaperone. Just 1 hour alone with no one asking, no one watching. Later you escort her to the guest chambers. They're grander than your own. Better tapestries, more warmth. She smiles and kisses your cheek in thanks. As you walk away, the cold rushes back in. You tug your cloak tighter. In the evening, your husband's squire returns. No sign of your lord, just a message delivered by parchment. You don't read it aloud, just nod and slip it into your sleeve. He's extended his stay. Negotiations, he says. Land disputes. He won't return for a fortnight. You pretend not to feel relief. You'll sleep easier without the pressure of being a wife. And yet even with him gone, the duties remain. You still have to oversee the meals, the servants, the storage, the larder, the discipline, the prayers. He's away, but you're still caged. Dinner is roasted turnip, coarse bread, thin broth. The girls talk quietly among themselves, too softly for you to catch. One of the kitchen maids stares out the narrow window, her eyes red. You wonder if she's lost someone. You wonder if she had a choice in anything this week. Afterward, you walk the corridor with a lantern. The shadows are thicker at night. You hear the mice again, always the mice. No matter how many cats the steward brings, they always come back. They know the cracks in the walls, the warmth of forgotten corners. In a way, they know the castle better than you do. You pause by a window slit and look out. It's snowing now. Soft, steady flakes drifting across the torchlit courtyard. The snow covers everything, filth, footprints, rot. It makes the world seem pure. But you know it's just a mask. You wonder what it would feel like to run barefoot across that snow. Just once. No shoes, no titles, no name. Just a woman warm-blooded and unbound. But instead, you walk back to your chamber and latch the door. Inside, you strip off your dress. Layer after layer, unhooking ties and clasps until you're just you again. Flesh and bone. Nothing more. You crawl into your straw mattress, pull the covers over your shoulders, and lie in the dark. You listen to the snow fall. You listen to your own breathing. You listen to your thoughts trying to escape. And you wonder quietly, secretly, dangerously, if this is Apuwalmayu, is what life is meant to be, or just what's been allowed to survive. The morning begins not with light, but with sound. Bells, deep, resonant, rolling across the cold corridors like a tide. You flinch before you open your eyes, not because the sound is unfamiliar, but because you know what it means. A death. Castle bells ring for many reasons, mass marriage warning, but you recognize this rhythm. 3 slow tolls spaced just far enough apart for dread to settle in between. Someone has died. Someone inside the walls. You sit up slowly. Your shift clings to you again, damp from sweat or breath or both. There's no need to ask who it was. The gossip will find you soon enough. Still, you dress quickly today, and when you open your door, the air is charged. Margot is waiting, hands wringing in her apron. "It's Alice," she whispers. Her eyes are rimmed red, as if she hasn't slept either. The scullery maid. You remember Alice. Pale hair, quiet voice. Always the last to speak, the first to work. Barely 15. You feel a stone settle in your chest. You try not to feel it, but it presses anyway. How you ask, but softly, because even questions can sound like accusations. Margot doesn't answer, just shakes her head and scurries off. You know the answer doesn't matter. Not really. Illness, accident, cruelty, they all lead to the same place in a castle like this. A shallow grave outside the chapel walls. A muttered prayer. A silence that stretches for days. At breakfast, no one mentions Alice. Not directly. Just more quiet than usual, more eyes cast downward. You chew your bread slowly and imagine her face, then force yourself to forget it. There's no room for memory here, not when they vanish so easily. Later, the priest arrives again. His sermons always grow longer after a death, as if words could sweep away what silence left behind. He speaks of virtue, of obedience, of divine order, of how each of us is but a thread in God's great tapestry. You wonder for a moment if Alice felt like a thread, or if she knew she was being unraveled. You're summoned to the Chamberlain's office before noon. He's a narrow man with ink-stained fingers and a mouth that always looks like it's tasting vinegar. You sit straight as he scribbles figures onto a ledger. With the scullery short, we'll need someone to manage the pantries directly, he says without looking at you. Lady or not, you'll need to oversee the distribution. I trust that won't be a burden. Of course it's a burden, but that's not something you're allowed to say. No, sir, you answer. He nods once and continues scratching notes. You rise and leave, but not before you see a slip of paper half covered by the ledger. A name. Alice. Next to a number and the word reassigned. Even in death, she's a line item. You spend the rest of the morning pacing the larder, trying to make sense of the stores. Barrels of dried peas, salted pork, cheese wheels furred with mold, some intentional, some not. The steward joins you briefly to grumble about wine thefts. He suspects the guards. You want to say it could have been anyone. Hunger is the one thing you all have in common here. But instead, you nod and promise to keep closer records. The hours blur. By the time you look out the high slitted window, it's late afternoon, and the courtyard is gray with snowmelt. A group of boys, stable hands, probably are tossing snow at each other. Laughing. A rare sound in this place. You press your fingers to the cold stone ledge and let yourself watch them for a minute longer than you should. Not because you envy their freedom, but because it reminds you that laughter still exists, even here. You turn away as footsteps echo down the corridor. It's one of the older ladies, Lady Brenna, her spine curved like a bow from years of duty. She smiles thinly as she approaches. You should come, she says. The other women are gathering. Why, you ask? Her smile fades. Because sometimes the only warmth we get is from each other. You follow her to a small room tucked near the kitchens. Not the solar, this one is hidden. You can smell herbs hanging from the beams, feel the faint warmth of a brazier in the corner. There are 7 women there, some younger, some older. One is holding a bundle of yarn. Another is mending a torn hem. But they are here for more than sewing. It's an unspoken rule, what's said here stays here. You sit. Take the offered tea, thin, bitter, but hot, and wait. Lady Maud speaks first. Her voice is soft, but her eyes are hard. Alice didn't fall. No one gasps, but no one looks surprised either. She was cornered, Maud says, by the armory. No one came. You grip your cup tighter. The heat bites into your skin. They'll say it was illness, she continues, or clumsiness, or sin. But it was silence. The same silence that keeps all of us from speaking when we should scream. There's a long pause. The brazier pops. Lady Brenna finally nods. Then we remember her. The youngest woman in the room, barely more than a child, ties a ribbon around a candle and lights it. They pass it around the circle. No names. Just a silent ritual. A breath of rebellion in a place where obedience is currency. When it's your turn, you hold the candle longer than you mean to. You don't speak. You don't need to. The flame says enough. Afterward, you slip out quietly. You return to your chambers and sit at the small desk by the window slit. You take out a scrap of parchment and a quill. You start to write. Not a letter, not a report. Just thoughts. The ones you're never allowed to say aloud. You write Alice's name. You write about the way she smiled when the kittens were born, how she hummed while polishing copper, how she flinched whenever someone called her name too loud. You write it all down, then fold the parchment and tuck it into the base of your mattress. Tomorrow you'll have to pretend again. Smile. Nod. Stitch. Instruct. But tonight, you've remembered someone who was meant to be forgotten. And somehow, that feels like resistance. You lie back in your bed. The wind howls beyond the stone walls, but you are warm. Not because the fire is lit, but because for the first time in a long time, you feel something stir in your chest that isn't fear. It's small, but it's alive. The next morning, everything is exactly as it should be, which is to say, exactly as it always is. The bells ring for morning prayers. The servants shuffle down the corridors. Margot brings your water, and you nod at her in silence. But something inside you has shifted almost imperceptibly. A grain of sand in the gears. You feel it when you lace your bodice, when you smooth your sleeves, when you walk the corridor, and glance just once at the hidden room near the kitchens, where 7 women gathered and told the truth. You keep your face composed, always. But your thoughts have become unruly. There's no time to entertain them, of course. You're expected in the main hall today to help receive visitors. Lesser nobles come to plead for land rights and grain rations, and your husband is still away, which makes you the de facto face of the household. You sit in the high-backed chair at the end of the hall. It's meant to elevate you, give the illusion of power. But the cold wood bites into your spine and reminds you that illusion is all it is. The petitioners come in one by one. A man with a hunched back offering chickens for barley. A woman with 3 children asking for permission to glean fallen wheat from the outer fields. A young widow hoping to remarry without forfeiting her dower rights. Each one bows low, each one avoids your eyes. You listen, you nod, you speak with calm authority. You grant small mercies what you can, without risking scandal. The steward stands beside you, arms crossed. He scribbles notes with too much ink, the quill scratching like a warning. You wonder if he watches to learn or to judge, probably both. When the hall empties, you exhale for the first time in hours. Your fingers ache from gripping the carved armrests. The hall smells of wood smoke and desperation. You rise, nod to the steward, and step outside into the courtyard. The snow has melted in patches, revealing the stone beneath. It's midday, but the sun barely touches the interior walls. A guard opens the side gate, letting in a boy with a satchel. A letter. You recognize the seal, your husband's. You break the wax with your thumb and read it quickly. He is returning in 3 days. He expects the household to be in order. He expects the accounts to be ready. He expects obedience, though he doesn't use the word. You fold the letter and tuck it into your sleeve. The peace you've known in his absence was fragile. Now it has an expiration date. That evening, the women gather again, not in the hidden room, but in the laundry chambers under the guise of sorting linens. They speak more freely now, voices softer but steadier. Lady Maud brings herbs wrapped in cloth feverfew angelica mugwort. remedies passed down from women whose names never made it into ledgers. They say these plants are for headaches and childbirth, she says, but I think they're for remembering, for keeping the old ways alive. You help grind the leaves with a stone pestle. The scent rises sharp and earthy. It cuts through the usual dampness. One of the younger girls asks if Alice was ever truly safe, if any of them are. There's no answer. Just the sound of grinding and the flicker of torchlight on the damp walls. Later, when the herbs are bundled and stowed away, Lady Brenna approaches you. You'll be watched more closely now, she says. You nod. You're still one of us, she adds. It's not a warning. It's a tether. You return to your chamber and light the candle early. You need the light tonight, even if it shortens the wick. You sit at your desk and write again. This time you don't hide the page. You leave it open, half-finished. It isn't rebellion yet, but it's preparation. The next day is full of chores. The stables need new straw. The cook complains of a spoiled barrel of flour. A boy cuts his hand on a splintered cartwheel, and you bandage it yourself while his mother weeps in the corridor. You move through it all like a shadow present, but never fully visible. A figure draped in responsibility. That afternoon, you're summoned to the solar. It's rare for someone to call you there. When you arrive, it's not another noblewoman. It's a stranger. She's wrapped in a dark traveling cloak, mud on her boots. Her hands are cracked, her posture too rigid for comfort. She's no guest. This is Leanne, the steward says. She'll be staying here for a time. A guest of the crown. You raise your brow. An inquiry, he mutters. On behalf of the Queen's household. You smile politely and offer your hand, but Leanne doesn't take it. She just studies you, eyes sharp, appraising. You wonder what she's here to investigate, or who. That night, the castle feels colder. Not just from winter, but from the presence of a woman who watches too much and speaks too little. You try to sleep, but your mind races. Leanne, inquiry, crown. You don't write tonight. You listen. You hear footsteps in the corridor long after curfew. A whisper of fabric. A door creaking open. You rise slowly and step to the door. You don't open it. You just stand there, hand on the latch, listening to the quiet sounds of movement in a place that's supposed to be still. Eventually, silence returns. You slip back into bed, eyes open, thoughts spinning. If the Queen sent Leanne, then someone has whispered secrets. Perhaps about theft. Perhaps about insubordination. Perhaps worse. You think about the meetings, the candle, the herbs, the things that weren't supposed to matter but suddenly might. You reach beneath your mattress and retrieve the parchment with Alice's name. You tear it in half, then into quarters. Then you feed it to the fire inch by inch until it's gone. Because memory is a form of rebellion, and sometimes survival means forgetting for now. Morning arrives pale and hesitant. The frost has returned, painting the window slits with feathery white breath. You sit up slowly, feeling the cold kiss your bare neck. The fire has long since gone out. You wrap your wool shawl tighter, and listening has become your new form of prayer. Nothing out of the ordinary. No echoing footsteps. No unfamiliar voices. But that doesn't mean all is well. In the castle, danger is often silent. You dress quickly and head to the kitchens. The cook greets you with a tight nod. She's kneading dough, her elbows dusted with flour, her sleeves rolled past the elbow. It smells like yeast and ash in here. Safe smells, ordinary smells. Bread ration's been short, she mutters. I don't like it. You ask if the steward has changed the accounting, and she shrugs. He counts what he wants to find. The rest is blamed on mice. You nod and move on. In the corridor outside, Lien appears again. No introduction, no question. Just a quiet presence in the archway, her eyes resting on your face like a weight. Good morning, you offer. She inclines her head, nothing more. Her gaze drifts past you to the shadows behind, as if she expects something to emerge from the cracks. You resist the urge to speak further. Whatever she's looking for, she won't find it from your lips. You walk past her deliberately measured steps, knowing she'll remember every detail. By mid-morning, the chapel bells ring. Not for death this time, just the midweek service. The priest's voice is thin and stretched. The pews are cold, but you kneel anyway. The scripture today is about women who waited. Rachel, Leah, Hannah. Saints and mothers. Always waiting. Waiting for sons, for husbands, for purpose. You wonder quietly how much of their story was theirs and how much was simply written by others. After prayers, you catch a glimpse of the servants whispering in the gallery. Their eyes dart toward Lien, who stands unmoving near the nave. She's watching again. Always watching. In the afternoon, you're called to the north wing, a part of the castle that rarely sees noble footsteps. The old granary has been converted into a storeroom for tapestries, forgotten crates, cracked shields. Dust cloaks everything like a second skin. The steward meets you there. We've had complaints, he says, about missing items. I need you to help inspect. He hands you a list. Several bolts of cloth, a small cask of imported vinegar, a tapestry depicting the martyrdom of St. Agnes. You doubt that last one ever mattered until someone noticed it was gone. You and the steward move through the musty chamber in silence. You mark items off the list. Some are easy to find, faded with age, chewed by moths. Others are nowhere. The steward frowns, mutters under his breath, scribbles. I'll double the locks, he says, and speak with the guards. You don't say anything. Theft happens all the time. The difference is whether it's punished or ignored. You step outside into the cold corridor. Lien is there. Of course she is. She looks at your ink-stained fingers and the clipboard tucked beneath your arm. You keep records, she says. You nod. I'm responsible for the household's inventories. Do you keep records of your own? She asks. You feel the pause between breaths. No, you reply. She says nothing, but you feel her eyes pressing deeper. That evening, the candle circle reconvenes, smaller this time. Only 5 women. Some too afraid. Some watched too closely. You speak little. Just listen. The talk is hushed, circling rumors. Someone thinks the steward is diverting stores. Someone else claims one of the guards was seen sneaking from the armory after midnight. But mostly, the talk centers on Lien. She asked me about the chapel wine, Lady Maud says, as if I were hiding it under my skirts. She searched the cook's larder without permission, another adds. She's not here for us, says Lady Brenna. She's here for something worse. That night, your dreams return, fragments, broken visions. You see a corridor that never ends, doors that don't open, voices that echo without language. You wake sweating, tangled in the blanket, the taste of old fear in your throat. You rise before dawn and slip through the hallways like smoke. The castle is never truly empty, but there are moments when it feels abandoned, when the only sound is your own footfall on the stone. You make your way to the chapel, not for prayer, for stillness. You sit in the last pew beneath a stained glass window, so clouded it barely filters light. You close your eyes. You hear footsteps. Lien. You don't turn. You don't speak. She sits beside you unexpectedly. Not close, not far. I've read the ledgers, she says after a long silence. They're meticulous. You nod once. There's a pattern, she continues. Losses tied to deliveries. Storage altered after inspections. I believe someone is using the castle's provisions to fund something else. You finally glance at her and you think I'm involved. No, she says. I think you're the only one who notices. You look away again. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm not here to accuse, she says. I'm here to listen. That phrase stays with you long after she's gone. That evening you write again. Not a confession. Not even a journal. Just a story. A parable. A castle where women were birds with their wings clipped. Where the stone was not protection, but cage. Where memory lived in candlelight and truth moved in whispers. You don't sign it. You tuck it beneath the loose flagstone near your bed. One of dozens now. Tomorrow your husband returns. Tomorrow the game begins again. But tonight you let yourself feel what you're not allowed to name. Hope. Not loud, not bright, but steady. The castle wakes early on the day of his return. You can feel it in the air, the tightening of every movement, the way servants glide faster through the halls. How the steward's voice cuts sharper through the corridor. Even the dust seems more obedient today, as though it dares not linger where he'll tread. You sit still as your hair is arranged. Margot's hands are gentle but swift. She doesn't speak, not like before. Everyone is too careful this morning. Your dress is blue, a soft shade meant to suggest composure. Modest embroidery. No jewelry save for the ring he placed on your finger the day you became someone else's responsibility. You smooth the sleeves down and breathe deeply, holding it in longer than needed. Because once he's here, your breath won't be your own. You stand at the gate as the hooves clatter on the frozen path. The guards shuffle into line. The steward adjusts his tunic. Then the procession appears, banners snapping in the wind, riders stiff-backed, and at the center, your husband. Lord of this keep, judge of your silence. He dismounts with ease, his cloak fluttering behind him, like a shadow that doesn't quite let go. My lady, he says. He doesn't smile. My lord, you reply. You curtsy as expected. He glances around, eyes scanning the courtyard as though inventorying it. Then he nods once to the steward and strides past you without another word. Welcome home. You follow him to the great hall, your steps soft, your posture perfect. A meal has already been prepared. Roasted meat, warm cider, too many dishes for what will be too little conversation. He eats like a man determined to finish quickly. Between bites, he questions the steward on taxes, grain output, tenant complaints. When he finally turns to you, it's only to say, I trust the household ran without disorder. You nod. Yes, my lord. Good. No praise, just confirmation. Later in the private solar, he reviews the ledgers you've maintained in his absence. You sit across from him, hands folded, not quite touching the table. He flips through pages like turning the wind. "You're thorough," he says. It's the closest thing to approval he's ever given. "There are some discrepancies," he adds, "but I'll handle them. You almost speak. You almost mention Lien, the rumors, the missing goods. But his tone is final. His decisions are already made." That night you attend the formal supper. Candles line the walls. Music stumbles from a tired lute. The wine flows thicker than usual, and yet everything feels thinner. Your husband sits at the head of the table, his voice louder than the others, his laughter timed for maximum performance. You laugh once. It feels rehearsed. It probably was. Across the hall, Lien watches from the shadows. When the meal ends, your husband makes his way to you. You rise before he can summon you. You walk beside him as he climbs the tower stairs. Your chamber awaits. His rights await. You lie beside him, eyes to the beams overhead, while his breath stirs the air beside your cheek. When it is over, you stare into the dark and think about the stone. The stone doesn't feel. The stone doesn't flinch. The stone endures. The next morning your limbs ache, but your face remains composed. You are expected in the chapel for a special blessing. Your husband believes such rituals demonstrate piety to his peers. You kneel beside him, his hand pressing against yours like a brand. The priest's words echo through the cold air. You hear none of them. Later you return to the candle circle. They're quieter now, smaller. 2 women are missing. One claimed illness. The other has not been seen since the steward visited her chamber the day before. The silence inside the room is heavier than usual. You light the candle anyway. You pass it around. When it returns to you, the flame flickers as you speak. "He's back," you say. They all understand what that means. That night, you do not sleep. You lie awake, heart slow but loud, your breath the only sound in the room. You rise before dawn and return to the North Tower. There behind a false panel in the wall, you find the papers, the ones you've written, the ones you've copied. Names, dates, transactions, discrepancies. Every small sin that no one thought you noticed. You gather them all and wrap them in cloth. You descend the stairs as the castle sleeps, your slippers brushing against the stone like whispered feet. Outside, the sky is still ink. The stars are fading. You make your way toward the stables. Lien is already waiting. She does not look surprised. "I knew you'd come," she says. You hand her the bundle. She doesn't open it, just slips it into her saddlebag. "You'll leave before sunrise," you ask. She nods. "I'll take the evidence, deliver it to the Queen's Guard. But this place..." She looks back at the towers. "This place will protect itself. You know that." You do. Still, you ask, will anyone be punished? Her answer is soft. Not yet. But someone will remember. You nod, and then quietly you say, "Take my name out of it." Lien tilts her head. "You've risked everything. I'd like to survive it." She says nothing, just mounts her horse and disappears into the mist. You walk back slowly, your feet numb, your chest hollow. But beneath the fear, there is something else. Not pride, not relief, something quieter. the knowledge that somewhere the truth now lives outside these walls. You return to your chamber before the bells. You undress, wash your hands, braid your hair, and when the servants knock, you are ready. You wear the blue dress again. You smile with just the right grace. You hold your secrets close, like warmth, like armor. Time moves differently in the days that follow, slower, thicker, like walking through fog. You fulfill your duties with flawless precision, but something inside you has gone quiet. Not dead, just listening, waiting. Your husband doesn't notice the difference. Or if he does, he interprets it as obedience, compliance. His satisfaction is a quiet nod at supper, a hand briefly on your shoulder as he passes a grunt of approval when you answer with, "Yes, my lord," at the correct volume. You become a shadow of your former self intentionally. The less seen, the more you can see. The steward grows bolder now. Lien's departure has reassured him. He begins locking the storage rooms again, though you already know the cracks where the keys fail. You overhear him barking at the guards, reorganizing ledgers, adjusting numbers. You note it all, just not on paper this time. Memory becomes your ink. You spend more time with the servants than usual, helping in the kitchen, standing near the laundry vats, sitting quietly by the old midwife as she grinds dried herbs into powder. You ask gentle questions, nothing too forward, nothing that would ring as suspicion. How long have you worked here? Do you remember when the granary caught fire? What happened to the girl before Alice, the one who always sang while she stirred? They answer, carefully, slowly. Some lie, some don't. But you collect every word like seeds. The castle's secrets are not held by its lords. They're held by the ones who scrub the floors, polish the brass, tend the gardens, and bury the dead before dawn. It's in the servants' quarters that you begin to hear the rumors. A new girl was brought in last week. No one saw her arrive. She hasn't been seen since. Someone says she's in the infirmary. Someone else whispers she's in the dungeon, though that hasn't been used in years officially. You try not to react. You try to keep your breath steady. You know better than most what happens when girls go missing in castles, especially quiet ones, especially when no one thinks they matter. You gather your shawl and walk to the chapel, not to pray, to count. There are 13 candles lit in the shrine to St. Bridget. You light a 14th, letting your fingers linger near the flame. You don't speak aloud, but in your head you say her name. You don't know her name, but you say one anyway, because no one else will. Back in your chamber, you wait until nightfall. You pull on your thickest cloak and wrap your shoes in cloth. You wait for the guards to change posts, for the corridors to settle. Then you move. You've mapped every inch of this place in your head. Every crack in the mortar. Every door that sticks. Every stair that creaks. You pass the laundry, the kitchens, the armory, and then you stop. The north wing. You've been here before, but always with purpose, always watched. Now you move with silence as your only ally. The corridor narrows. The air cools. You count your steps. You find the iron door. It's sealed, but the lock is rusted, and you know where the key hangs during the night beneath the ledger shelf in the steward's quarters. You retrieved it an hour ago. The key slides into place with a reluctant groan. You slip inside. The old dungeon hasn't been used formally in years, but that doesn't mean it's empty. The torch you carry casts long shadows on the damp stone. You see a row of cells, some open, some chained. In the far corner, you hear it, breathing, soft, shallow. You approach slowly. She's there, a girl young no more than 16. Her face is bruised, her eyes swollen. She flinches at the light. "You kneel, I'm not here to hurt you," you whisper. She doesn't speak, but her shoulders begin to shake. Whether from cold or fear or relief, you can't tell. You pull the water flask from your cloak and hand it through the bars. She drinks greedily, coughing halfway through. Then hoarsely, she whispers, Why was she brought here? Why was she beaten? Why did no one care? You don't have answers, only actions. You reach into your cloak and pull out a ring of small tools, ones the seamstress taught you to use when your embroidery frame jammed. One of them fits the lock. It takes time. But the cell opens. She stares at you, uncertain. You reach for her hand. "Come." She hesitates, then takes it. You wrap her in your cloak. You guide her through the shadows, retracing your path. You stop often listening. You don't speak. When you reach the servants' quarters, you knock softly on the third door to the left. It opens. The midwife stands there, candle in hand. She sees the girl, sees your face, says nothing, just steps aside. You leave the girl in her care. No names exchanged, no questions asked. When you return to your room, your husband is still asleep. You slide beneath the covers without a sound. Your heart is thundering. You've never done anything more dangerous. You've never felt more alive. The next morning arrives like it always does, bells, footsteps, cold air, murmured prayers. But beneath the surface, everything feels fragile. You walk slower, listen harder. Every glance, every whisper carries weight now. At breakfast, your husband reads from a letter. Something about an upcoming inspection from a royal envoy. He frowns as he speaks. He never likes outside scrutiny. "They think they know better," he mutters. "These inspectors, these women with their cloaks and their eyes." You keep your face blank. Your fingers tremble slightly on the handle of your spoon. But no one notices. Because no one ever looks too closely at a woman who does what she's told. Later in the corridor, you see the steward speaking in hushed tones with one of the guards. His eyes flick toward you, then away. He doesn't trust you anymore. That much is clear. You've become unpredictable. That makes you dangerous. You retreat to the solar with a scrap of embroidery you don't care about. Its cover. There, Lady Brenna finds you. She sits beside you without greeting. Her hands are folded in her lap. "I know what you did," she says softly. "You don't deny it." She nods. They'll search. They'll ask questions. But she's safe. The midwife has sent word. She'll be taken in by the sisters at the convent by the river. You feel a tightness in your chest uncoil just slightly. "But you," she adds, her voice lowering, "must be careful now." You glance toward the window. A storm is forming on the horizon. You can smell it in the air. By nightfall, the rain begins. It pelts the windows, seeps through cracks in the tower drums on the roof like impatient fingers. The wind howls against the stone, a wild, frantic song. You sleep lightly, fitfully. Just before dawn, a knock at your door, not gentle. You open it to find 2 guards, not the ones who usually patrol your floor. "You're summoned," one says. "No, my lady. No bow." You dress quickly and follow them through the twisting corridors. Down. Always down. They bring you to the armory. The steward is there. So is your husband. And the girl from the dungeon. Your breath catches. She's alive. She's standing. But her eyes are full of fear. Leanne stands beside her. She's returned. You feel the stone walls press in around you. Your husband steps forward. There are questions, he says, about the theft of royal property, about manipulation, about treason. You meet his gaze. Then look at Leanne. I told you to take my name out of it, you whisper. She nods. I did. She didn't. The girl's voice trembles behind you. She saved me. A silence falls. Leanne turns to your husband. There's enough here for an inquiry, for an audit of the steward's records, for a reassessment of this household's management. Your husband's face is carved from ice. The steward pales. You speak calmly, evenly. If you accuse me, you accuse yourselves. I hold no power in this place, only observation, which is sometimes more dangerous than command, Leanne replies. The girl steps closer to you, takes your hand. I'll testify, she says. And just like that, something shifts in the room. Your husband turns away. I want her gone, he says, meaning Leanne, before nightfall. Leanne doesn't flinch. I leave tomorrow, after the girl is escorted to the convent, with or without your blessing. She looks at you, so do you wish to go? The room tilts slightly. Go to the Queen's court. You've proven capable. You'd be protected. You glance around the chamber. At the guards, the steward, your husband, the girl still clutching your hand. No, you say. You feel Lady Brenna's words echo in your mind. You must be careful. My place is here. Leanne studies you for a long moment, then nods. She turns to the guards. Escort the girl to the outer gate by dawn. I'll meet you there. The guards bow. Leanne leaves without another word. So do the men. You and the girl are left alone in the flickering firelight. You could have gone, she whispers. You kneel and wrap her cloak tighter around her. Someone has to stay, you say, to keep watching. Dawn breaks slowly, as though reluctant to enter the castle today. The rain has stopped, but the mist lingers, curling around the towers like old secrets. From your window, you watch a lone rider depart the girl hunched beneath a hood, flanked by two guards. Leanne rides behind them, her cloak trailing like a banner of unfinished business. You stand there for a long time until their forms vanish into the fog. And then you turn because the day will not wait. Your husband does not speak to you that morning. He leaves the table early, muttering to the steward about Leanne's interference, about needing to tighten the reins. He's angry, but not loud. Not yet. That's worse. You know he's calculating. At midday, you receive notice your access to the larder is revoked. By evening, the chapel keys are reassigned. By the next morning, Margot is replaced by a younger maid who avoids your gaze. You are being silenced. Not all at once, but carefully, methodically. You expected this. Still, it stings. You continue your tasks with grace. You smile where required. You retreat to the solar when dismissed. You embroider with hands that ache from restraint. Lady Brenna sits beside you more often now. She doesn't ask questions. She just brings the needle and thread and the tea steeped with calming herbs. They think fear will work, she says, but it only sharpens the quiet. You stitch a rose with thorns. That night, the wind returns. It rattles the shutters, whispers through the halls. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling. You trace the beams with your eyes and count your breaths like prayers. When the knock comes, it is soft, unfamiliar. You open the door. It's one of the kitchen boys, no more than 12. He holds a folded scrap of parchment. "For you," he says, and disappears. You unfold it carefully. It's not signed, but you recognize the handwriting. Leanne. There's something in the records room, behind the third shelf. West wall. I didn't have time, but I think you'll know what to do. You burn the note, letting the ashes fall into your wash basin. Then you wait. You know the guards rotate posts every third bell. You dress silently, layering wool over linen, and wrap your boots in cloth again. The halls are darker now, torches dimmed to preserve oil. You pass 3 corridors and 2 staircases before you reach the records room. It smells of mildew and ink, of paper forgotten. You move quickly, third shelf. West wall. You run your fingers along the stone and find it. A loose slab smaller than the others. You wedge your dagger's tip into the crack and pry. Behind it, a hollow space no more than a handspan deep. Inside, a packet of parchment tied in twine. You tug it free and move to the nearest candle. You open it. Letters. Not from the steward. Not from your husband. From someone higher. A nobleman at court. They're discussing shipments, bribes, disguised losses, mentions of a woman sent to clean up the mess. Leanne. You inhale sharply. They weren't afraid of theft. They were afraid of exposure. These documents name names, not just in your castle, others, all connected. You tuck the pages beneath your cloak and return the slab to its place. Back in your chamber, you don't sleep. You read every line, and when the sun rises, you write. You write a letter not to the queen, to her archivist, someone who will recognize the seals, who will know what to do. You seal the documents into a bundle, then press your signet into the wax. Then you call for the messenger. You'll ride to the capital, you say, to the south wing of the Royal Archives. Deliver this. No one else, no detours. He bows, takes the packet, leaves, and you are left with nothing but silence. You return to your duties, to the illusion of normalcy. You tend the herb garden. You visit the chapel. You mend a tear in Lady Maud's hem and pretend your hands don't shake. But inside, a storm is brewing. Not just outside these walls, inside them. Because now you hold something dangerous. You hold the truth, and you've just let it loose. 3 days pass. Long ones, quiet ones, too quiet. You continue your routine, visibly unchanged. You smile politely at supper. You nod at the steward during the morning checks. You hum a lullaby while darning a sleeve, even though your hands don't believe the tune. But your ears are sharper than ever. You hear the murmurs in the courtyard. The guards speak in low tones, watching the road more closely than usual. The kitchen staff has grown tense, clumsy. A shattered plate goes unpunished. A broken pitcher earns only silence. Even the mice are restless. Then late on the 4th day, a rider appears. Not from your house, not from the neighboring barons. His cloak bears the royal crest. You watch from the upper corridor as he dismounts and speaks to the steward. You can't hear the words, but you don't need to. You already know. The steward pales. Your husband appears moments later, his face flushed, voice rising. You hear the words unwarranted and protocol and loyalty. But the rider is unmoved. He hands over a sealed scroll. Not addressed to your husband. Not to the steward. To you. You are summoned. Your name. Your seal. No title. No flattery. Just a command. You walk slowly down the main stairs as all eyes follow. The rider bows, offers the scroll. You take it. Inside formal language. Cold, precise. You are required to appear at the Capitol within 7 days, to testify, to bring all relevant records written or memorized. Travel accommodations will be arranged, protection guaranteed. You read it twice, then fold it. Your husband says nothing that evening, not during supper, not afterward. But you feel the storm behind his silence. That night, he enters your chamber uninvited. He closes the door behind him and doesn't speak for a full minute. Then, in a voice heavy with control, he says, "What have you done?" You look at him. Everything inside you stills. "I've told the truth," you reply. His jaw tightens. Do you think they'll believe you? They already have. He steps closer. You will ruin this house. You lift your chin. No. You did. He doesn't strike you. He doesn't shout. He just turns and leaves. And somehow that's worse. You pack in silence. You choose simple clothes, durable boots, a lined cloak. You leave behind your embroidery, your keepsakes, your journals, all of it. Except the ring. You place that on the table before you go. At dawn, the escort arrives, 2 riders, both armed but unthreatening. The steward is nowhere in sight. Your husband watches from the tower. He does not wave. Lady Brenna meets you at the gate. She presses a bundle of herbs into your palm. "For the road," she says, "and for courage." You nod once. Neither of you says goodbye. The castle gates close behind you. You don't look back. The road to the Capitol is long. The trees are bare this time of year, their branches skeletal against the sky. The wind tastes of winter. The sun barely warms the stones beneath your horse's hooves. But your mind is clear. You remember every name, every figure, every false entry. You recite them silently like scripture. At night you sleep in guarded inns. You keep the scroll close. You listen for footsteps. You dream of towers and keys and corridors that lead nowhere. But each morning you wake and keep riding. On the 4th day you reach the outskirts of the Capitol. You've never seen so many buildings, so many people. The streets are paved. The river is wider than you imagined. The air smells of smoke and bread and something sour beneath it all. You're led to a modest house within the palace walls. Not a cell, not a chamber, a guest room. You sit alone that night by a fire someone else lit. And for the first time in years, you are truly warm. The next morning you are summoned, not to court, to a chamber of scribes. They sit with ink-stained fingers and eyes like lanterns. They ask you to speak. Slowly, clearly, you begin. You tell them what you saw, what you recorded, what you remember. You name no names until asked. When asked, you speak them without hesitation. They write everything down. When it is over, the eldest scribe stands. "You've done more than most," what he says. You nod. "I didn't come to be praised," you reply. "I came to be heard." He bows. You return to your room. There's a letter waiting, a seal you recognize. Liane. Just 3 lines. I told them you'd stay strong. They believe you, and more will come forward now. You stare at the paper for a long time. Then quietly, you begin to write your own letter. Not to the queen, not to the scribes, to the women of the castle. You don't know if it will reach them, but you write it anyway, because you've seen what silence costs, and you've learned what words can do. The letter you write is short, not elegant, not flowery, just clear. You speak of cracks in stone walls, of rooms where truth was spoken in candlelight, of names that were never meant to vanish. You sign it not with your title, not even with your name, but with a single phrase, "We are still watching." You hand it to a palace courier the next morning, a quiet boy with clever eyes. You press a coin into his hand and whisper the castle's name. "Give it to Lady Brenna," you say. He nods and disappears into the city like a feather caught in the wind. Now you wait. You are told the court is reviewing the testimonies, that decisions will be made, that punishment, if any, is being considered at levels above your reach. But you are not idle. The scribes return. They ask you to review the ledgers of other keeps. Not just yours, dozens of them. Line by line, you find the same patterns, the same vanishing numbers, the same names repeating like a prayer that was never meant to be heard. You realize something terrible. It wasn't just your castle. This is a web, a quiet one, threaded through kitchens and chapels, granaries and gatehouses, and woven by men who knew no one was watching. Until now. You stay in the guest house for days, then weeks. Each morning someone knocks with another record, another confession, another story. Women begin arriving, a seamstress from the east, a noble's widow from the south, a kitchen maid who brought her sister's bones in a bundle of linen, seeking someone who would name what was done. They ask you to listen. You do. You do more than listen, you remember. One night, as the fire crackles low and your fingers cramp from writing, a knock sounds at the door. Not a courier, not a guard. Liane. You rise slowly, unsure if she's real. She smiles. She's dressed plainly, travel-worn and wind-tossed, but her eyes are the same. "I heard you caused trouble," she says. You smirk. Only a little. She enters and sets down a satchel full of sealed letters. "More names," she says. "More places." You pour her tea. You sit across from her. And for the first time in your life, you talk as equals. Not as a noblewoman and an enforcer. Not as a lady and a servant. As women who refused to keep the silence. She tells you stories of women who ran entire households without recognition, of girls who disappeared beneath chapel stones, of one midwife who buried 13 stillborns, none of whom were truly born still. You share your stories, too. You speak of Alice, of the girl in the dungeon, of Lady Brenna's herbs, of the candle circle, of the fear, the small resistances, the bitter victories. When dawn breaks, you are still speaking. You look at the window's pale glow and feel something shift in your chest. It's not hope. It's certainty. You cannot go back, nor would you want to. That day you are summoned not to court, but to a tower. A royal advisor greets you. He is old with hands that tremble but eyes that do not. You've changed things, he says. You say nothing. It is inconvenient, he adds, almost smiling. Still, you remain silent. Then he unrolls a scroll. A decree. The steward of your former household has been removed. Your husband has been placed under review. An interim lady has been assigned Lady Brenna. Your eyes widen. She will oversee the estate, the advisor continues. Until further notice. You exhale slowly. There is more, he says. We want you to train others, to teach women how to audit, how to see, how to speak. You blink, me. He nods. You watched when others looked away. That's the beginning of justice. You leave the tower with a new weight in your hands. Responsibility. You walk back to the guest house and sit by the window. Outside, the city moves like a current, messy, vibrant, free. You write another letter. This one is longer. You address it to the women still inside the walls. You tell them what happened, what changed, what's coming. You sign it the same way. We are still watching. You seal it with your ring, not because of what it means, but because it's yours now. Not his. You no longer belong to the keep, to the silence, to the stone. You belong to the story you're writing. One word, one truth, one voice at a time. They assign you a room in the palace proper by the end of the week. It's not grand 4-stone walls, a sturdy bed, a writing desk, but the key is yours. You turn it in your palm that first night, marveling at its weight. How small it is. How powerful. You pin your letters along the wall. Dozens now. Testimonies. Confessions, stories. Some sent from far corners of the kingdom, some handed directly to you in whispers and silence. You trace the ink with your fingers, learning every slant, every tremble of script. Women who wrote despite fear. Women who remembered. Women who saw. Each one becomes a light, and your wall becomes a constellation. In time, others begin to arrive, not just to confess, but to learn. A scribe's daughter who knows how to read faster than anyone in the court. A brewer's wife who's been keeping her own household's ledgers for 10 years, better than any steward. A former laundress who speaks 5 dialects and can recite grain weights from memory. You gather them in the garden behind the tower at dusk. Not formally. No banners, no pronouncements. Just a quiet circle of firelight bread and shared knowledge. You teach them how to trace false ledgers, how to listen between the lines of a nobleman's speech, how to recognize when a missing name means more than a smudged entry. They listen with the sharp hunger of women who've waited too long to speak. You begin drafting new documents, not just accusations now, but proposals. You argue for rotating inspections of keeps led by women from outside noble bloodlines. You suggest new seals that mark not just allegiance to the crown, but to transparency, to memory, to care. Some advisors scoff, but they read your proposals anyway, because your name is no longer a whisper. It's a record. One evening as the fire dims in the garden, a girl asks you a question. Why did you stay? Why didn't you leave when Liane offered? You pause, then smile. Because I knew there would always be another girl left behind. You don't need to say more. They understand. Weeks pass. A new office is created, small, at first unofficial. A room above the west stables with bad windows and a leaky roof. But it becomes a headquarters. You call it the ledger room. You hang a map on the wall and mark every place a letter has come from with a red thread. The map starts to resemble a spider's web, every string tied to a woman who remembered. One day you receive a letter from the convent by the river. The girl, the one you pulled from the dungeon, has taken vows. She writes it herself. Her penmanship shaky but proud. She signs it with her own name. Not a number, not a title. You cry when you read it, not because she needed saving, but because she survived and named herself. Another day, a parcel arrives from the castle you once called home. Inside is a small bundle wrapped in linen, a candle stub, a red ribbon, and a note scrawled in Lady Brenna's hand. We're still meeting. The circle grows. Even the steward's wife now comes to listen. He doesn't know, but she does. You place the ribbon on your desk. You light the candle every night now, even when you don't need it, because you remember what that flame meant and what it still means. Some evenings you think about the girl you were, the one who watched from behind veils, who flinched at loud footsteps, who learned to smile just right to bend without breaking. You miss her, not because you wish to be her again, but because she walked through so much alone and never stopped watching. You write her a letter too. You place it beneath your mattress just like you used to do. The next morning, a rider arrives from the Queen's Council. He brings a new seal, gold and crimson, stamped with an open eye. He hands it to you without a word. You know what it means. You hold it in your palm for a long time. The wind whistles outside. The candle flickers. You stand at the window and look out at the courtyard where more women gather each day. Scribes, midwives, gardeners, nobles. The future carried in skirts and calloused hands. You press the seal into a blank scroll and begin to write. Not another complaint, not another confession. This time, it's something new, a charter, a promise, a record that cannot be burned. The charter takes weeks to complete. Not because you don't know what to say, but because you know the cost of every word. You cross out entire pages, rewrite sentences until they feel like stone, not air. Each clause is a shield, each phrase a torch. By the end, it is not beautiful, but it is unbreakable. You send it to the Queen's chamber in the hands of a young woman from the laundry wing, the daughter of a blacksmith. She's never set foot in a royal hallway before, but she walks the marble path like she was born to it. Later, word reaches you the Queen has read every line, twice, and she's signed it. The seal returns with a ribbon you recognize red from the candle circle. You hang it beside the map. From that moment, the movement is no longer quiet. It ripples outward. Other castles begin forming their own record circles. Women write down the names of lost sisters, catalog mysterious deaths, share receipts, herbs, shadows. It spreads across convents and kitchens, through towers and tunnels, from coastlines to mountains. And each time they sign the same way, we are still watching. Some nobles resist. Of course they do. They call it rebellion, witchcraft, disorder. But now when they speak, someone listens. Now when a girl disappears, a letter follows. Now when a steward pads the ledger, another hand writes it down. And the women who once whispered begin to speak aloud. You become a symbol, though you never asked to be. People begin calling you the ledger mistress. You don't like titles, but you let it stay, because you know the power of naming. One night a woman arrives at your tower gate. She's older, dressed in simple wool, her hair streaked with gray. You don't recognize her at first until she speaks. Margot. She kneels when she enters. You rush forward to stop her. I couldn't say anything before she says, "I know you whisper." She presses something into your hand, a piece of linen folded carefully. Inside, a torn page from your old mattress, the one you thought had been cleared out after your departure. It's one of your first hidden letters, the one about Alice. "I saved it," she says. "I didn't know why. I couldn't throw it away." You unfold it. The ink is faded, the paper soft at the edges, but your words remain. You add it to your wall, not because it's perfect, but because it was the first time you spoke when silence was easier. The city begins to change too. A new office is built not above the stables this time, but in the stonework of the palace itself. Wide windows, shelves lined with reports, and a courtyard filled with benches for women to sit and speak. No guards, no priests, just listeners. You visit often, but you don't run it. That job goes to a miller's wife from the north, who taught herself numbers after her son died of a miscounted ration. You trust her more than you'd ever trust a court-appointed clerk. One morning, a girl arrives with a bundle of pressed violets. She lays them at the base of the city's central statue, a knight on horseback, sword raised. But she doesn't look at the knight. She looks at you and smiles. It's happening slowly, quietly, but undeniably. The stories are being rewritten, not with glory, with truth. That same day, you receive a letter from Lady Brenna. She's older now, slower, but her handwriting is firm. The castle is quiet again, but not in the old way, in the right way. The women are safe. The candles still burn. I still light one every week. You write back immediately. You ask her if the roses still bloom by the chapel steps, if the mice still sneak into the grain store, if anyone has restored the tapestry of St. Agnes in the north wing, and you ask her just once if she remembers Alice. She replies within the week. Yes. I remember her laugh. I remember her hands. I remember the way she blushed when the bread burned. We all remember. You sit with that letter for a long time. Then you rise, take a blank scroll, and write a new list, not of offenses, not of crimes, of names. Names of women who were lost, who vanished, who were never given a place in the story. You hang it in the new hall beside the city's archive. It's the first thing people see when they enter. Not the knight, not the crown, the women. You add to it each month. The paper stretches longer with time. You begin to hope it never ends. Not because the losses continue, but because the remembering does. The list grows longer, and with it the hall changes. People begin to bring offerings not grand, just personal. A broken thimble, a carved spoon, a strand of ribbon. Each item laid beneath the scrolls, each name remembered not with gold, but with presence. You never intended to build a shrine, but that's what it becomes. A shrine of memory, of resistance, of all the lives pressed quiet between the stones. One day, a young boy enters the hall. He's not more than 8 with straw-colored hair and mud-caked boots. He stares at the names for a long time, then pulls a small rock from his pocket. Smooth, polished, clearly important to him. He places it beneath the name Mira. You want to ask who she was. Sister, mother, friend, but you don't. You simply nod, and the boy walks away. Later, you write Mira's name again. Bigger this time, with care, because someone remembered her. And that is enough. Outside the city, the letters continue. Castles that once refused to open their gates now request audits. New circles form not in secret, but in public, in daylight, on feast days. Women gather in markets and sew names into banners. They walk the walls of their homes and speak stories aloud. And they no longer ask permission. You receive visitors now, nobles and commoners alike. They bring ledgers and worries. You don't solve everything. You can't. But you listen. You show them how to read between the lines, how to write truth into margins, how to see what's always been hidden. You train them to watch. One evening you walk through the old quarters of the palace. You find yourself standing before a familiar door. The first guest room, where you were taken long ago before anyone knew your name. You open it. Nothing has changed. The same bed, the same chair, the same cracked window that lets in too much wind. You sit on the edge of the bed and listen to the silence. Not the silence of fear, the silence of knowing you are no longer alone. In the days that follow, more women begin to arrive at the capital, not just with ledgers, but with songs, stories, poems. They recite the names aloud in town squares. Children learn them alongside their letters. One school commissions a book, not a history of kings and borders, a history of women. Written by women. You are asked to write the foreword. You decline. Instead, you nominate Lady Brenna. Her letter arrives weeks later, written in thick, deliberate script. We once lit candles in secret. Now the flames are seen from towers. I never thought I would live to see it. I thank you for staying, for risking your silence. And I thank myself for deciding not to go quietly. You keep her letter in your drawer beside the first scroll you ever wrote. The one about the steward, about the girl, about Alice. You reread it sometimes not to relive the pain, but to remind yourself where the light came from. One night, while reviewing a list of inquiries, you noticed something strange. A name. Yours. Not listed as a witness, not even as a record keeper, but as precedent. See the quiet woman of the tower to year 14 of the Silver Crown. Audit Reform Charter Section 1. Subclause 3. You laugh softly, not because it's wrong, but because it's surreal to see yourself become a footnote in the laws you helped shape. You close the scroll. You walk to the window. The city breathes below you, lamplight in every corner, voices rising from alleyways and balconies. And you know the castle still stands far to the north, its stones unchanged, but its silence broken. You close your eyes and picture it. The main hall lit not just with torches, but with memory. The hidden chamber near the kitchens, now a gathering place, walls lined with names, laughter rising in place of secrets. The chapel, with its rows of candles, some for prayer, others for remembrance. And maybe, just maybe, one for you. Not as a noblewoman, not as a mistress of anything, but as a woman who watched, who listened, who dared to write things down. The years pass like turning pages, quiet at first, then faster than you expect. The scrolls multiply. The ledger room outgrows itself and moves twice. A second archive is built on the southern coast. A third begins construction near the northern border, funded entirely by a group of village women who've never stepped foot in court, but say they've felt the ripple. You age, but not in silence, not in stone. You still walk the city each morning, your cloak trailing behind you like a banner of habit. Children wave. Vendors greet you by name. Sometimes someone stops you, presses your hand, and whispers, "I wrote one." You always nod. You always smile, because you know what that means. Some days you think of the girl in the dungeon, other days of Alice. And some nights when the wind shifts just right, you swear you can still smell the old herbs Lady Maud used to steep. Still hear Lady Brenna humming as she stitched a broken hem. Still feel the candle's warmth flickering near your fingertips. They're gone now, many of them, but they're not lost. Because names once spoken do not vanish. They root, they bloom. The new generation of scribes call themselves the Red Ribbon Keepers. They wear the color in their hair on their sleeves, around their necks. They speak with purpose. They ask bold questions. They write faster than you ever did. You watch them work and feel something quiet and whole settle into your chest. One spring morning you receive a visitor you don't expect. Your husband, older, slower, dressed simply. He asks to speak. You sit with him in the garden. The air smells of lilacs and parchment. He looks everywhere but at you. "I heard what they say about you," he murmurs. "What you built." You nod. I thought you'd want me to say something." You shake your head. "I didn't stay behind for your apology." He flinches. "I know," he says, "but I came anyway." You let the silence fill the space between you. Not with anger, not with regret, just with truth. "I didn't understand what you were doing," he says. "You weren't meant to," you reply. You don't see him again. But that conversation lingers not because it changes the past, but because it proves that history, even the most rigid kind, can listen. One day you wake with pain in your hands. The ink feels heavier than usual. The stairs feel longer. You hand off your scrolls to a younger keeper and spend more time beneath the trees, letting the wind carry your thoughts. The wall in your room is nearly covered now, not just with names, with drawings, notes, threads, petitions, bits of cloth, 1,000 little pieces of truth. You sleep more, dream more. You dream of corridors filled with light, of girls laughing as they walk freely through halls once cloaked in silence, of towers ringing with stories, not bells. In your final days, you write one last letter. You don't address it to anyone. You simply begin to the one still watching. You write about the power of observation, about how not speaking is not the same as not knowing, about the value of a name spoken out loud, about the way even a single flicker can light a tunnel. You write, you don't have to be brave all at once, just enough to listen, just enough to remember. You seal it in wax and leave it on your desk. No one moves it. After you pass, they plant a row of candles in the tower garden, one for every name you recorded, one for every woman who ever sat in silence and dreamed of light. And then one more, for the woman who remembered first. and now the candle dims. The hall grows still. You lie back, eyes closed, breath soft. The stone walls of the castle melt away, leaving only memory of footsteps whispered across cold floors, of red ribbons tied in secret, of names spoken into the dark and carried into the light. You are not alone in your silence anymore. Somewhere, the women you've met, real or imagined, still walk the corridors, still share their stories, still stitch truth into quiet places. The castle doesn't feel as heavy now, not as hollow. It holds more than secrets. It holds echoes. And you've walked through the shadows. You've stood at the tower window and watched the world change. You've learned that even the coldest stone can be cracked by care. Even silence, when shared, becomes song. So rest now. Let the soft hum of history cradle you. Let your breath slow like parchment unrolling in quiet hands. Let your thoughts drift to candlelit rooms where no one flinches, where no one forgets. You are safe. You are remembered. And you are part of the story, now the one that was nearly lost, but never truly gone. So pull the blanket up to your chin. Feel the warmth return. And let the darkness hold you gently, not in fear, but in peace. Because in the quiet that follows, someone is still watching. And someone is still listening. And someone is still lighting a candle. Just for you.